Question number 4, Dr. Russell Norman. Order. I've called Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, what will be the additional weekly cost of borrowing for someone with a $300,000 home mortgage should interest rates increase by 0.3% as a result of the recent double credit rating downgrade?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if mortgage interest rates increased by 0.3% for any reason, then the cost, I think, would be about $17 a week. What, of course, has actually happened is that floating mortgage rates are at 45-year lows. Back in 2008, the fixed mortgage rate was, I think, over 10%, and now it's around about 6%, and that is worth some $200 a week benefit to the average New Zealand household.
Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So does the Minister of Finance accept that if there is an increase in mortgage rates, say of 0.3%, someone with a home mortgage of $300,000 will be paying an extra $17 a week in order to service their mortgage?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there's a mathematical calculation about 0.3%, which equals to $17 a week. But what's actually happening with interest rates is two things. One is that around the world interest rates have been dropping, and so that's a downward pressure on interest rates for not very good reasons, I might say. The conventional wisdom is that a credit rating downgrade would push interest rates up. We haven't seen any evidence of that yet, but on any given day you don't quite know where the floating interest rate's going to come out.
Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Has he seen Standard & Poor's statement saying that the responsibility for the downgrade lies in part with the government because, quote, the country's fiscal position has been weakened by Christchurch earthquake-related spending pressures, and if so, does he accept that his decision to borrow to pay for the rebuild rather than strike a temporary levy has led in part to the downgrade?
The Honourable Bill English.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, no, I don't actually think so. I understand the proposition the member's putting forward. The fact is that the levy as he proposed was, I think, a 10-year levy. It simply wouldn't have raised the cash needed now to meet both the welfare requirements, the payouts, for instance, for the red zone, the ongoing funding of infrastructure rebuilding, the ongoing operation of EQC, which is now very large. We simply wouldn't have raised the cash in time. There will, of course, be effective levy increases as a result of the earthquake. People who are renewing their insurance premiums right across New Zealand are finding that, and it's likely the EQC levy may have to increase significantly as well.
Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does he accept that a temporary targeted earthquake levy raising $1 billion a year, as the Greens proposed, would have reduced the fiscal pressure on the government, hence reducing the likelihood of a credit downgrade by Standard & Poor's?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think it would have made much difference. I mean, the reasons behind the reasons the rating agencies have talked about are, I think, quite familiar. The build-up of external debt to the rest of the world, which accelerated through the first half of the last decade, and that the government's fiscal position is a bit weaker because through the recession we continued to fund public services, and his levy wouldn't have made enough difference to the earthquake funding to change anything about the credit rating.
Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does he appreciate that a person on an average wage with a $300,000 mortgage is better off paying an earthquake levy of about $1 a week rather than paying $17 a week extra as a result of increased mortgage costs that have come or may come with the downgrade?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't think any prospective levy could have been that low. I mean, the government has made a decision about Christchurch, which has enabled us to demonstrate a very strong and clear commitment to the rebuilding of that city, and we have no reason to rethink that decision.
Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is he concerned that most New Zealanders will now be paying higher interest rates to foreign-owned banks as a result of the double credit rating downgrade, rather than a targeted levy which would go to help pay for the rebuild of Christchurch?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I don't see that those are explicit trade-offs. I understand the point the member's trying to make, but that's not how the government sees the issue. And it's made decisions about funding the earthquake and about the levy, which we don't think would have made any difference to the ratings outcome.
Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does he stand by his answer when I questioned him in March about the risks of a credit downgrade in relation to borrowing to pay for the Christchurch rebuild, when he said, and I quote, "We are very conscious of the risks of a downgrade and believe we are making the right considered choices to deal with those risks"? And does he now accept that his considered choices were not the right ones and that we need a new plan to limit government borrowing, and an earthquake levy could be part of that plan?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the answer to the first question, no. The answer to the second, we do have a plan to limit government borrowing, and we look forward to the support of the Green Party, who are displaying a lot more economic logic than the Labor Party as we put that plan into place.
Question number 5, the Honourable David Cunliffe.